Hi.
Hi, Elon. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thank you so much for being here. And by here, I mean...
Sure. Electronically.
Electronically.
My bits are there.
And where are you right now?
I'm at the Tesla Giga Texas factory that we're about to complete. So yeah, what you see behind me is the factory basically. We have the office space and the factory kind of together. So I think this is kind of important that we don't have ivory tower management or engineering, and that the management and engineering is as close to the factory as possible. So yeah, so you can see what's going on in the factory and stay grounded.
All right, well, I'm in the ivory tower here in front of a lot of CEOs and a live audience here in Washington, D.C. And we are also joined by lots of people all over the internet. We are streaming this to WSJ.com, Twitter, and YouTube. So we have a very brief amount of time, only 30 minutes, but I'm very excited to talk about a wide range of things. I want to start with talking about our world, the world we currently live in. Then I want to move to the future of the world, and then talk a little bit about your world. And so we'll start right here in Washington, D.C., where everyone is talking about the infrastructure plan and the bill. And I wanted to ask you, say tomorrow you get a phone call from Joe Biden, and he says...
I think that's unlikely, but sure.
Okay. You know, he just gives you a call, and he says, you know, I haven't been talking a lot about Tesla lately, but, you know, what do you need from this bill? What are your needs? What do you answer him?
Well, I mean, to be totally frank, I don't know if we, at least no one at Tesla has actually brought up whether they care about this bill or not. I think if this bill happened or didn't happen, I don't know. We don't think about it at all, really.
Okay.
It might be better. Honestly, it might be better if the bill doesn't pass, because we've spent so much money. You know, it's like the federal budget deficit is insane. You know, it's like $3 trillion. Federal expenditures are $7 trillion. Federal revenue is $4 trillion. That's a $3 trillion difference in. If this was a company, it'd be a $3 trillion loss. So I don't know if we should be adding to that loss. That seems pretty crazy. Something's got to give. You can't just spend $3 trillion more than you own every year and expect, you know, don't expect something bad to happen. I think, you know, this is not good.
Well, Mitch McConnell's actually saying...
In fact, if I may elaborate on that, the deficit is more than $3 trillion when you look at the future obligations. So it's $7 trillion of current expenditures, but it's much more than that if you look at future obligations for Social Security, Medicare, and so forth. So we're running this incredible deficit. Something's got to give. I don't know. This can't keep going.
Well, Mitch McConnell said something similar. That it wasn't too, not as extreme as you. But okay, so let's say his follow-up question is, okay, Elon, you don't think we need to spend anything on the infrastructure? If he says to you, what is the biggest improvement we can make to the U.S. infrastructure? What do you say?
I think we generally could have better airports, better highways, and you know, I think that especially in cities that are congested, we've got to do something to deal with the extreme traffic, which I think is some combination of double-deckering freeways and building tunnels. But if we don't do something, we will be stuck in traffic for forever. And as autonomous vehicles come to the fore, and it's easier to drive without going through the pain of having to drive yourself, which is absolutely coming, and will be one of the biggest transformations ever in human civilization. There will be more cars on the road, and the traffic will get much worse. And so we really need to do some combination of tunnels and or like I said, double-deckering freeways. I'm not a big believer in flying cars. They're basically helicopters with wheels, and people don't want the skies to be swarming with helicopters. So it's tunnels and double-deckering freeways. We don't have a traffic problem in suburbs. We have a traffic problem on freeways because they were just too small and did not anticipate the size of the urban environments that we currently experience. So, yeah, but I don't see a strong effort in this direction.
Well, I want to come back to autonomous vehicles, but want to just stay a little bit more on the role of government. You said at this conference actually a year ago that you think government should really just be hands-off when it comes to innovation. Though with this bill, there is a lot of support for EVs, and it could be the biggest change that we've seen throughout the country in terms of the infrastructure of EVs, and it helps Tesla. What do you think the role of government should be?
I think the role of government should be that of like a referee, and you know, like, but not a player on the field. Generally, you know, government should, I think, just try to get out of the way and not impede progress. I think there's a general problem, not just in the U.S., but in most countries, where the rules and regulations keep increasing every year. Rules and regulations are immortal. They don't die. There's not a natural. Occasionally, you see some law with a sunset provision, but really, otherwise, the vast majority of rules and regulations live forever. And so if more rules and regulations are applied every year, and it just keeps growing and growing, eventually it takes longer and longer, and it's harder to do things. And there's not really an effective garbage collection system for removing rules and regulations. And so gradually this hardens the arteries of civilization, where you're able to do less and less over time. So I think government should be really trying hard to get rid of rules and regulations that perhaps had some merit at some point, but don't have merit currently. But there's very little effort in this direction. This is a big problem.
And I also want to come back to later. I know that you do have some other stance on sort of AI and what the rules and regulations we should have on that. But right now you're sitting in a Tesla factory. How are you spending your time these days between the split between SpaceX and Tesla?
Yeah, it's about even between SpaceX and Tesla. It depends on, you know, what is the kind of crisis of the moment. So some weeks will be more Tesla, more SpaceX. But I mean, I work a lot. I work 7 days a week and put in I get some pretty crazy hours. So. But it really depends on where I'm needed most. I triage the tasks and try to do the things that are most useful or where I'm most needed. You know, and it varies from 1 week to the next. But you know, just going back to that infrastructure bill for a second, because sometimes the criticism of Tesla is like, hey, Tesla gets all these subsidies, but it's worth noting that for the vehicle purchase tax credit, the $7,500, Tesla stopped getting that like 2 years ago. So whereas everyone else, I think, except for GM, still gets the $7,500 tax credit. So all of our sales this year and I think last year had nothing to do with the tax credit because we were no longer eligible because we'd made so many electric cars. Tesla's made roughly 2/3 of all the electric cars in the United States. I'm not sure if most people are aware of that. So Tesla's made basically twice as many electric vehicles as the rest of industry combined. And we don't need the $7,500 tax credit. I would say, honestly, I would just can this whole bill. Don't pass it. That's my recommendation.
What about the support though for the charging network? I mean, there are parts of this bill and no.
No, I mean, do we need support for gas stations? We don't. So there's no need for this for support for a charging network. I would delete it. Delete.